Measurements matter. And before you think that we are talking about the scales or measuring your body, we are not. We are talking about where you are right now. Actually understanding just that baseline for you and never actually looking at what somebody else is doing, but actually starting where you are at and building from there. So, hey, it is Peter, Sal, and Sue here today, and we are from Strong Healthy Women, and we're going to dig into this topic. So, I'm going to start with you today, Sal. Tell me what you think about measuring and why it matters.
Measuring is such an important thing because as we age, our fitness levels change. I know for myself, I'm training different to what I was training in my 20s and 30s. Even in those late teens when we all, were going to the gym and doing the aerobics classes and those sort of things, our training and our fitness changes as we age. So I think it's very important to not look at the scales and not look at the tape measure, but look at where you are. And if you are struggling and you think, oh, this is really hard, think about what you're doing. Are you still trying to do what you were doing in your 20s and 30s?
It's a good point. Just this morning, I had a friend come out to pick some stuff up, and she's 10 years older than what I am. And we were down the back, but we had the gate shut because the horses are in the paddock at the moment. And so, we went through one gate and I just climbed through the middle of it, which she followed me. So she did that. But then when we picked up the stuff and I was carrying all the big stuff and she just had the little bag, we came back through the opposite gate. And that opposite gate meant we had to go under the gate. And she said, oh, no, my flexibility is shot. I wouldn't be able to do that. And I said, it's okay. I'll just open the gate up. And which is what I did. And she said, like, my back is really, really sore and I need to, go and do Pilates. And I said, well, it's a really interesting thing. Why Pilates? So why do you think that is going to help you with your lower back? She didn't really have an answer for it. But, I know that with your back, it's generally coming from your core. So in that instance, Pilates is a great option. But, I would always start with the foundations and look at, building some strength because she's not doing any strength either. So, but when we got back to the house, I said to her, let me show you one stretch. I said, here, get on this. So it was this one stretch that I showed her. And I said, we're going to hold it for 30 seconds, which we did. And I said, and how's your back now? And she said, oh, there's relief there. And I said, this is the number one thing, and it is so easy to do, and you can do it when you get out of bed of a morning, if you're waking up with that little bit of back pain. And it really is just creating that L shape in your body, laying your hands on the bed, and then, just pointing your chest down towards your knees, towards the ground and into your body. And it really just stretches out through your legs, up into your hips, through the whole entire back, and then into your shoulders and your arms. So it's a complete body stretch, and it's just a marvelous, marvelous thing to do. And she said, oh, wow, I can start doing that. And I said, yeah, it really is just identifying where you're at. And I said, instead of thinking about that you've got to, find this hour of time or an hour and a half of your time to actually go to a Pilates session, maybe what you can just simply do is start by regularly doing this stretch when you wake up, and whenever your back is actually, causing you any little niggles or whatnot, do the stretch throughout the day. And she said, oh, that's a good way to start. And I said, yeah. So I think that's another good lesson here, isn't it? Because sometimes we think that it has to be something so monumental that we change, and it doesn't have to be. It's like, where am I right now? My back is killing me. So is there just one thing, just one tiny thing that I can do to improve that? And once I do that and I'm become consistent at it and I'm starting to feel like my back is feeling stronger, then I move to the next stage and I do something different then and I add to it.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the times when we talk about, measuring where you're at, as you said, our mind goes to that monumental stuff. Okay, well, I can't run. I can't walk for 30 minutes. I can't do a full-on push-up. That's where our mind goes. Our mind goes to that, that advanced level of fitness, and that's not what it's about. It's, where are you at? Okay, well, what are your aches and pains? Think about what you're doing in your house. Can you carry your laundry basket outside? Does it hurt to reach above your head? So that's another way to measure where you're at right now and what your baseline is, what you have that you can work with.
Yeah. And then if you take it to that next level as well too, when you wake up of a morning, how are you feeling? Like, do you really feel like you've got the energy for the day, or are you feeling like you really am going to struggle throughout the whole entire day? Now, most of the time for me personally, I sleep pretty good. And it's very, very solid. I get my deep sleep, I get my REM sleep, but last night I didn't sleep well at all. I woke up quite a number of times throughout the day, throughout the evening. And I woke up super, super early and I thought, well, I'm awake now. I'm just going to get up, which therefore means I know that I haven't had the right amount of restorative sleep. I haven't got that really, really important REM sleep as well too. And so what it means is today, I'm probably not, well, I know I'm not in a situation where I should really be going out and doing any full-on exercise. I really need to nurture that, because what's going to happen is I will create more stress on my body because it's already under stress because I haven't got enough sleep for the night. What it also means is I'm probably going to make poor decisions. So I have to be really, really mindful today that I will probably start to feel tired throughout the afternoon, and that I have to have a plan in place so that I don't make those silly afternoon slump decisions, like, going for some chocolates or something like that. So, and that's what it's about, isn't it? What we're really talking about here is understanding just that assessment for yourself. So each and every day, it's going to be different. It's not always going to be the same. And I think sleep is a really, really valuable part of it.
Definitely.
So let's throw to you. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking about when you wanted to start doing a program, or you want to start moving again and you haven't for a while. That's when you really need to assess where you're at. And that's what we do in our, programs, don't we? Someone new comes along, we have an assessment for various aspects of fitness, so that we can get that benchmark. Okay, this is where you are at right now. So you are not going to do a full push-up, for example, straight away, because you are at this level. So it helps you then to be able to start at a level that's going to be safe for you, and to help you progress up, to the different levels of how we do each exercise. And, there are ways, or, I think that it's important to have those benchmarks, because it's also, this is where I am now. And then in 6 weeks' time, for example, you can look back and say, wow, look how far I've come in that 6 weeks. And if you didn't really know where you were starting at, for example, I could only do 3, I'll use push-ups as an example, but I could only do 3 push-ups, and I could only do them at the beginner level. I've now moved to 5 push-ups, and I'm doing them at a a higher level. So, you know, it's good mentally as well, because it makes you feel, it shows you your progress, which is important, but that also helps your self-esteem and your self-confidence, and you will want to keep going ahead. So I think that, you know, if you are starting something new, as you and Sal have said, don't go, you know, for the highest level. You find out where you're at that's good for you now, that's safe for you, and you start there and you work on that and you build it up.
It's a good point. Like, we have our 21-day knee pain solution program happening right now, and we've just wrapped up on week 1. So the ladies have been doing an assessment of themselves. So it's like, you know, with the particular movements that you've been learning and the exercises you've been learning, like, what have you noticed? Let's get down and dirty with it, you know. So really, really tap into it. So maybe you were moving 6 inches to start with, and now you're moving 7 inches in one particular area. So it's really about noticing the progression that you're having, really about noticing the limitations that you have as well too, because when you can do that, then you are more equipped to make better decisions for yourself. Because if you simply just go, I'm just going to start exercising, and you just go straight into it, you have no idea how far you progress. And sometimes those progressions, those wins that you're having, may not be showing in the way that you traditionally think about, which is the scales. And so we really want to be able to look at it from a different viewpoint, rather. And so that's more about what I'm achieving, what I'm noticing, as opposed to those measurements on the scales, as an example. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't measure yourself on the scales, but it really is important to know just those limitations. And I honestly believe that we don't necessarily spend enough time in reflection and really tapping into what is happening within our own being. One of the...
And I think, sorry, I was just going to go back to the limitations, Peter. I think too, sometimes we can sit in those limitations, so therefore we don't start anything.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I do have bad knees, I do have bad shoulders, I do have a bad back, so I'm not going to do anything. Instead of using those limitations as your baseline and measuring to see how far you can go.
Yeah, great point. Great point. So you were going to say something?
I was just going to say that I had a friend who has been trying to, you know, lose a bit of weight and what have you, and she's got a very bad back, or it was, and she's got scoliosis, and she was trying to do things, and you know, and I was saying to her, well, you know, you need to just stop for a minute and assess. Now, what are you doing that is perhaps exacerbating the pain in the lower back and that sort of thing, because that's something you need to do. So I think it comes back to what you said, Peter, about being self-aware, but taking, you know, instead of just doing something and thinking, well, I've got to do this. If it's not working for you, you need to stop and assess why. Now, if it's because you're in pain, well, you need to think about that. Or if you're not getting whatever result you want to get with anything in life, you need to stop and assess. And that's why having those little benchmarks along the way and assessing your progress will show up also where, if something's not working, why isn't it working? And then you can tweak it. But if you just keep doing the same thing all the time and nothing's working, well, you're not going to get anywhere. So you need to be able to be a bit more self-aware and in whatever you're doing, but let's say fitness, how your body's responding. And if it's not responding the way you need it to, why isn't it? I've tried this, but this has happened, and that sort of thing. But I also think being aware, and this is probably off on tangent, but being aware of how your body is reacting to certain things, or being aware of what's happening with your body, you may need to seek medical advice.
Oh, totally.
Something might be happening where you need to go and see your doctor. So if you're not taking any measurements there, if you're not sort of saying, well, you know, I've been not feeling well, but what is it? When's it happening? Is it happening at certain times or whatever? That way you've got that information that you can take to your health practitioner, and they've got a better understanding as well. So I think it comes back to being self-aware of lots of things in what's happening.
Yeah, like some of the things that I'm hearing from the ladies who are doing the program right now are that they are more aware of the mind-muscle connection. So, you know, they've learned how to go through the process of engaging the muscle, because it is a matter of actually connecting to the brain and actually saying, this is the muscle that I'm going to work. You know, if you're doing a bicep curl and you're just, you know, waving your arms around aimlessly, you know, you're not really thinking about the contraction of that muscle. So you're not doing the most that you possibly can for that muscle as you're working it. So you're not engaged in the process, you know. So the other things that I've heard were, you know, not engaging their glutes. So it really does come down to really connecting our mind and engaging when we're doing exercise, but also assessing how we're feeling, and really being honest with ourselves. You know, I often see ladies who I'll be talking to them and they'll tell me that, you know, here's all the things they've got wrong. When they fill out a health form, as an example, none of those things show up on a health form. It's like, well, you know, if you have a different trainer working with you other than me at that time, how is that trainer going to know that? They're relying on that form to fill out. So, you know, did you accidentally miss it? Did you rush through? So it comes down to being mindful when you're doing things, as opposed to just, you know, getting in the busy zone, and that busy zone can be extremely dangerous. So.
And it's so absolutely important that you are honest with, as you said, Petey, any health issues that you have.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing a session and you just say we've got our Fitness Foundations, for example, it's a 6-week program. You've been going through it for 3 weeks. And then as your trainer, we're looking and going, okay, so what's happening there? Suddenly this has come up. You know, and then you're going, well, oh no, you know, I've had that issue for years and years and years. You know, we need to, as your trainer, if you have these issues, that's how we plan your programs, and that, you know, that's how that is also taken into account when you're measuring your baseline.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely, be perfectly honest with everything.
It opens up another thought then. What do you measure for a baseline? Like, you know, if you're someone who's just starting out and you're going, well, what do I start with? I would start with, how is my body feeling? What am I noticing? Do I have any aches and pains? You know, take a look at myself. Am I hunched over? How am I waking up of a morning? How am I feeling when I go to bed of a night time? So just really taking a good look at just the day-to-day functions of what happens. And I think that's a really good starting point, because then
that goes for your brain as well, Peter. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because we can go into that, there is such a thing as brain fog.
Yeah.
So being aware, taking stock of that as well during the day when you're assessing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. I want to actually introduce these lovely things, the old wearable, because I think they're a great tool when it comes to assessing and knowing where you're at. So, and there's lots of different ones available to us. You've got your Apple, you've got your Samsungs, you've got your Garmin's, you've got your Whoops, you've got your Aura rings, the list goes on and on and on. So there are a lot of options available to you. So I think, if you are someone who's wearing a wearable, then you really want to go, well, am I getting the best quality that I can get? And am I assessing the right biometrics? So, because I think for most of the ladies in our communities, most of them look at their steps. Would you agree with me, girls?
Yes.
Yeah. So they look at their steps.
Yeah.
And so what we know from the World Health Organization is that they say that we should be hitting 10,000 steps a day. Now, how did 10,000 steps come into being? It was a marketing campaign put out by one of the first pedometers ever invented in Japan. And that's how it came about. But there's been lots of studies since then that show that it's around 15,000. But I've recently looked at some other research over the weekend, and what they've done with this research, it's over thousands and thousands of people based on the data that they're getting from all of these wearables that that we've all got on our arm or fingers or wherever we happen to have them. And what they found from that is the average steps in some countries are around 3,000. Some are hitting 5,000, and us Aussies, we're getting around 7,000. So, we're doing okay as far as steps are concerned. But I honestly think that from my perspective, I look for constant movement. So I don't necessarily look for those big spikes, and going out and doing that 10,000 steps, although, very capable of, and sometimes I do that, most days I do that. But then even if I've done that 10,000 steps in the morning, for example, I will then, at the end of the day, this comes back to the assessments, I'm going to look at that watch and I'm going to see, or I'm going to look at the phone because that's where the information is all collated. I'm going to look at the phone and I'm going to see, are those little green bars all the way across throughout the day? Or was there a period of time where I just did nothing and I sat? Because that period of time that I sat is the period of time where I'm not doing the absolute best that I can for my body.
Yep.
What are you thinking about steps?
I have the same. I know Peter and I have a different wearable.
Yep.
He has a Samsung. I have a Fitbit. On my Fitbit, I can set it. So every hour it gives me a reminder to move 250 steps.
Yeah.
And I have it set during a time period during the day. And I think it's from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. at night.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's just an alarm that goes off on my phone. Get up and move.
Yeah, mine vibrates. So I
Yeah.
just have a little vibrate set for mine. And I know. So, by the time we finish here this morning, it's going to be definitely vibrating at me and telling me, get up off your backside and go and do something. But, there are so many other measurements available to us on these types of facilities. And we don't often look at any of those others. And I honestly think that sleep is a foundation. So if your wearable is capable of measuring, your 2 phases of light sleep, your 2 phases of deep sleep, and your REM sleep, and you can look at those, you can make better assessments for yourself throughout the day, which, I spoke about, me having a bad night's sleep. And if you are someone who is currently having a bad night's sleep, then what you want to do is have a look at what you can change. The very first thing is stop having overhead lights on of a nighttime. Get yourself, because our circadian rhythm is impacted by the light that we're having come in. So if we're not starting to actually appreciate and visualize the darkness that's coming in, then what's going to happen is when it's going to impact the quality of the sleep that we have. And so the light is definitely the very first thing that we can do. Exercising in the morning has actually been proven to have better impact on the amount of sleep that we have and the quality of the sleep that we have, which is a really interesting study. And look, the list could go on and we could do a whole thing on sleep. So I'm not going to do that. But it really is, I think, at the very foundation. So if your wearable is capable of doing it, I would definitely look at sleep. Is there any other metrics that you think on your phone or on your wearable that you should be looking at? Sue?
Well, I use the same thing. I've got an Apple one. So mine will say with 10 minutes to the hour, it'll say time to stand up if I haven't achieved a minute of at least a minute of movement. And then it also shows me my movement through the day, how I've been going. I look at my heart rate, especially if I'm working out. So I'll put on if I'm doing a workout, I'll put out what type of workout it is, and I keep an eye on my heart rate there, making sure, I get it to a good level if I'm doing cardio or that sort of thing. But also during the day, I'll just check it to make sure how that's going. So heart rate's another one that I use in my my measuring tool for the watch.
What about you, Sally? Do you use any others?
I use the mindful. I have mindfulness on the Fitbit. Yeah. And so it will actually come up on my wrist. So if my heart rate's getting elevated, and it's quite funny because sometimes it comes up during a workout, and it'll tell me to stop for 2 minutes and do some inhale and exhale. But I like looking at the mindfulness as well.
Yeah, I have a reminder in the morning when I get up and put it on. It'll be a mindfulness reminder. Just take a few moments before you start the day, and then of an evening it'll be time for some mindfulness, reflect on your day, and that's a good prompt too, because as Peter said before, we're all busy, so it's good to just stop and reflect.
I actually did a quick list. It is not the complete list for the Apple, which was heart rate variability, blood oxygen, low cardio, VO2 max, mobility based on your walking, which is a really interesting one, the quality of your walking speed. I think that's important as well too, because there's so many studies that actually show us that our walking speed is related to our longevity as well. It's even got, I don't know whether you're using this one, a fall detection on there. So you're going to fall. Yeah, and so you know, and the mindfulness was one of the ones that, you know, the minute you said it, that I knew that it was on there. And then, you know, Garmin is very, very similar, and you know, the list goes on. But I think I often measure heart rate, but I really like the ones that measure the heart rate variability. So that's the little bip in between the heart rate that it's measuring, because that's a really good detector of, you know, anything that's happening with your heart. It's also a great indicator when it comes to, you know, stress, anxiety, all those types of things as well too. And I know from my perspective that we have personally, the three of us have talked about this before, where I was, you know, had a situation where we had the two little grandbabies here, and because their mother wasn't well, and you know, we thought that we were accommodating what was happening, you know, sharing the load and everything like that, and we thought we were going okay. And then, you know, when I looked at that heart rate, I went, oh, I am actually being impacted by this. Even though I felt good, that heart rate variability was actually telling me something that was very, very different to that. And so I knew straight away that I needed to spend more time in, you know, that more meditative state, and just listening to what was, or not so much listening, but actually paying attention to the measurements that I was actually seeing, and do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, great session, ladies. Sal, what would you like to wrap up with today?
I just want to add on to when you do have your wearables, ladies, just remember it's not 100% accurate.
Yes.
It is a guideline just for you. So don't just rely on your wearable for all your information that you need to for your, you know, measuring markers.
Yeah.
Go keep in mind all those other things that we discussed this morning. You know, how you're feeling, how your body's feeling, where you can start, what you can do, what you can't do. Don't just rely on that wearable.
Yeah, good point. Sue?
I would suggest, if you don't already do it, starting with what Peter said, you know, the measuring in the morning, how am I feeling, connecting with yourself, but also then at night time before you go to bed, how was my day? You know, even little things of like, what did I achieve today, or what do I feel good? You know, how am I feeling? What could I do better? Those sort of things. So a morning to prepare for the day, and then an evening to close out, just being aware of where you're at and how you're feeling.
Yeah, great advice. I honestly think that what can happen with, particularly with a lot of these wearables, they can have groups set up, and you can see how you're traveling in regards to groups. I just honestly think that being part of a group is a great way of connecting with a community. But if you are someone who is going to actually compare yourself to that, I would steer clear of that.
I agree.
And the other thing is that
Absolutely.
I think they can become a little bit obsessive. So if you're someone who's, you know, out there and you're constantly looking at it all the time, then it could be time to just take it off and just live without it for a little bit, so that you're actually coming back into that mindfulness zone, that you are reconnecting with yourself, and that you are assessing exactly how you feel, noticing those aches and pains, those limitations, noticing when you have great energy, noticing when you wake up well, you know, and when you don't wake up well, you know, what were the differences? So, you know, this is where journaling comes in, ladies. It is really, really important. And look, you don't have to sit and write a page worth of information. You can just simply go, here's what I noticed today. Because it does give you that opportunity to track yourself, be aware of your own being, because this is your life. You get to choose it, and you get to live it the way you want to live it. So I would say the first thing that we want to do is actually tap into our own being. So today we've been talking about measurements matter. So thanks, ladies, for joining me.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks,
Sal.
Peter.
Thanks, ladies. We'll see you all soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.